Story 1. We were each trying in our own ways, but we were failing to communicate our actual needs and wants in a way that the other could understand. Story 2. I just couldn't get the love I was giving back. Felt like a chase and pull game. I didn't feel loved in the relationship, so I had to leave. Story 3. I have been with my wife for nearly 23 years. A year ago, she chaperoned a work trip to Europe, as she works in education. When she came back, she was a completely different person. Emotionally distant, lacking intimacy, and angry at me all the time. We have 3 small children and face many external pressures, including family obligations and both of us working full-time. But our relationship had always been great and intimate. The change was drastic. In our conversations and during couples counseling, her only explanation is, "I'm not happy and I haven't been for a long time." I ask her why she's unhappy and why I seem to be the source of her unhappiness, as I am the only thing she wants to remove from her life, but I get no response. Just, "I'm not happy, I'm sorry, and I hate it." There are many red flags suggesting an affair. I just don't understand how we got to this point when everything seems so good for over 20 years. There must be a reason why she wants to separate, but she isn't providing one, and she doesn't have the decency to be honest with me. It's excruciating. I don't think I've cried this much since preschool. Story 4. He had anger issues and needed to drink constantly to prevent himself from trying to harm me simply because I did not fit his idea of a possible wife. He forgot that I am my own person with my own likes, voice, wants, and needs. Story 5. She was an emotionally abusive person. I didn't really understand how bad it was until I got away from her. She consistently tried to break me down and force me to do everything her way while degrading me in the process. I apparently wasn't allowed to grow as a person because whenever I thought or did something differently, she had an issue with it. When we finally split up, she acted like a child about the whole situation, trying to ruin my reputation, steal my friends, and accuse me of various nonsensical things. Story 6. Choice. He chose to walk away. You cannot hold a person back when they decide to leave, right? No matter what you say, how right you are, or how good you have been, they will not stop if they have chosen to walk away. You fall in love by chance, but staying in love and together is a choice. Cannot be forced. Story 7. It literally happened yesterday. He feels his role is to be a single dad and thinks he is not worthy of finding a lasting romantic connection. His ex really hurt him, along with unchecked childhood trauma. He is honestly the nicest, kindest, sweetest, and most empathetic guy I have ever dated. However, he has had many people let him down. We had the best connection and fun together, and he acknowledged it. But he said he couldn't give me what I needed. Considering I do not want kids and only want attention, I did not think it was too much to ask. In the end, he is in charge of his own happiness. I am pretty bummed about it, but I can accept it because I am not responsible for others' happiness. I really hope he finds what he is looking for because he deserves it. I wish I were the one, but that is life. Story 8. It's not an exciting answer, but we both realized we were not compatible after a long talk and broke up. The mutual breakup was the best one I ever had, better than the time I broke up with a girl who falsely accused me of assault. I had evidence of my innocence from the beginning, but due to the inefficiencies of the legal system, I had to spend 2 months in jail. Story 9. She told me last Wednesday that she has had 2 affairs. One for 18 months when we first got together, and another for 2 months that ended recently. She also mentioned a one-night stand with a woman last year. She actually told me about that one when it happened, and I let it slide and forgave her. I thought she was my best friend. It turns out the past 5 years have been one great big lie. It hurts so much. Of course, I left last Wednesday, and I have blocked and deleted her number. So there is the reason. Story 10. We had a baby, and the sleep deprivation and stress caused us to argue often. I regret it deeply and wish we had never broken up. Story 11. I watched him go from a partner at a law firm to sitting on the couch for a year without working. He developed major depression with suicidal thoughts unexpectedly when he turned 35. We had just started dating almost 5 years ago. During the nearly 5 years we were together, he went through 3 attorney roles. We decided it was best for him to take a professional sabbatical in January 2025. I stepped up and took over his mortgage and bills. He thought getting prescribed a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor would be adequate help, but it wasn't. I kept telling myself it was the same as if he were sick with cancer or had a disability. He couldn't help this. He spent a year on the couch, placing sports bets on my laptop while I worked as a consulting engineer for 40 to 60 hours a week, pursued my engineering master's degree full-time, paid his bills, and ensured we both had everything we needed. He accused me of being a poor communicator, claiming I wouldn't talk to him and that I twisted his tones and words. When you don't feel emotionally safe with someone, and they react negatively anytime you ask something of them, you do become a poor communicator to keep the peace. I continued to convince myself that this situation was no different from a major illness or disability. My resentment grew strong toward the end of last year. One evening, he said something that hurt my feelings, stormed out of the room, and didn't speak to me for a week. Yet it was my responsibility to reach out to him. I lost it and started packing my things. He cried and begged me to stay, and I did. A few days later, he lashed out again, claiming I misinterpreted all his words and actions. In January 2025, he had blown through his savings and came to me crying, asking for more money. I went and got him more money. He openly said he would rather die than go back to work and that he was glad I was career-oriented and enjoyed working. In February, he cracked his skull after falling in the bathroom. Had I not rushed him to the car immediately, he would have died. Thankfully, his neurosurgeon said he would be fine and would return to his baseline, with no life-altering issues. I was his caretaker, stayed with him in the hospital the entire time, worked remotely, bathed him, stayed up with him all night cleaning vomit and getting his medicine. He was a monster. I told myself he couldn't help it because he had a brain injury. I eventually had to leave him when he was at rock bottom. He was completely out of control, insisting that I was the one with issues and needed help, claiming my tears were a form of manipulation. When I told him I was leaving, he became aggressive and hostile, yelling that I was not in it for better or worse. I left, told his wealthy parents everything, and can never go back. He triggered many wounds I had never addressed and brought up issues I struggled with my entire life. My guilt is overwhelming. I still feel like I am the problem and that I'm a complete failure because I once promised him I was in it for the long haul before the accident. Now I feel differently. Story 12. I was really attracted to him. We got along brilliantly and talked all the time, but we actually had nothing in common. We should have stayed friends from the beginning, which we still are. Our relationship lasted about 10 months until a few weeks ago. I have found myself in this situation twice, thinking that opposites attract, but in my experience, you need something in common, a shared interest, even just one. Story 13, we wanted different futures. We still cared about each other, but our paths just didn't align, and prolonging it would have hurt more. Story 14, honestly, it was a healthy relationship. However, having been accustomed to toxic dynamics and extreme highs and lows in relationships, I grew bored and decided to end things. It has been a few months, but lately, I felt very guilty about my decision. Story 15. She ended our relationship right before the 4th of July in 2017 because she realized I wanted children and she did not. I met my now wife about 3 months later, and we now have a 3-year-old. Story 16. I would have to go back to 2004 and check for details, but it was mainly due to her cheating and treating me like an idiot and my reacting like one. Story 17. I have come to my senses. Leaving a toxic relationship is the best decision I have made after all the pain and sacrifices I made for that person. Story 18. He was emotionally closed off, lied about his age, and took me for granted. I felt like an option and a beggar. Story 19. We both had many issues with codependency and communication. He was very unkind to me for no real reason, yet I wasn't the one who ended the relationship. Story 20. There is no solid reason except that she needed to focus on studying and university. At the time, I thought it was nonsense, but she hasn't dated anyone in the few years since and is dedicated to her course. Story 21. I literally don't know. This was years ago, but I started dating a new guy and things went amazingly for a month. Then my appendix nearly burst and I almost went septic. I was in bed with an abdominal incision for 2 weeks when he started to get distant out of nowhere. I repeatedly asked what was wrong and was brushed off. Eventually, he came over, and things felt so off that I knew I was getting dumped. I was basically thinking, good God, just spit it out already. I've known you for 2.5 months. Stop acting like this is the end of the world. Eventually, he ended up sitting on my couch silently until I said, if you're dumping me, you can just leave. He said he wanted to talk about it, but I cut him off and said, I don't. Like, dude, it's been 2 weeks of me begging you to talk while you keep refusing. I opened the door for him, he left, and I dropped his stuff off at his door a few days later. I never found out exactly what was going on, but he regularly checks my social media despite living on the other end of the country now, so I think I made the right choice. Story 22. I realized I poured a lot into our life together and was getting nothing back. He transformed as a person while I felt drained, and he wasn't going to do anything to help me. There were also multiple years with little to no intimacy. Now he's living his dream life while I plan to end mine. I realized about halfway into our relationship that life can feel like a waste of time, but I tried to improve things. Now I'm over that illusion. Story 23. My parents didn't approve of the relationship because my ex is white and I am Indian. We tried to hide the relationship, but eventually my mom found out. It started to strain my relationship with my mom, so I broke up with him. It hurts. We are still good friends, though. Story 24. She completely wants kids, and I somewhat want kids. It's her lifelong dream to be a mother, and I didn't want to sacrifice what I wanted for my life or have her sacrifice what she wanted for hers. Story 25. We started smoking cannabis with our friends last summer, and he is the most obnoxious high person I've encountered, almost starting a fight with someone after dark. He always guilted me into driving him and not smoking because he didn't want to drive so he could get high. Then he accused me of cheating with our friend after I dropped our friend off at his house when my ex was too intoxicated to drive. Story 26. He turned into nothing. He just sat on the couch and played video games. His eyes were open one moment and closed the next. He stopped brushing his teeth, showering, and keeping up with everything else. We had the same argument every week until I kicked him out. Story 27. She constantly argued over everything, and I always worried that anything I said could unintentionally cause an argument. Arguments often lasted hours, with her repeating the same points. At times, she would hurt herself. One instance required me to take her to the hospital because she began arguing when I walked ahead to call an elevator. She assumed this meant I was embarrassed to be seen with her because I thought she was unattractive. When I tried to explain that I was simply trying to get the elevator, she insisted that I was gaslighting her, and eventually, she harmed herself and bled extensively. The hospital had to put staples in her arm. Story 28. They experienced a mental health crisis and fabricated a bizarre story about the terrible things I did to them, none of which were true. He still believes it to this day. It turned out to be a positive event for me because he had been abusive for years, and it was the final push I needed to leave. Story 29. He didn't believe I was joking about his voice sounding strange. He also mentioned that my voice sounded unusual, but I brushed it off. Later that night, he unfollowed me on all platforms. It was just a silly joke. I don't understand why he was so upset when he started at first. Story 30. She wanted to keep using clarity, but I didn't respect her or her decision. She was 43 with a 6-year-old son for whom she was fighting her ex for custody. She even had an emergency protective order filed against her and didn't see it as a wake-up call. We had great intimacy, though. That's probably the only reason she tolerated my disdainful behavior. Story 31. He blocked me yesterday. I was trying to resolve the conflict and get clarity. I sent several messages. Story 32. He ended the relationship unexpectedly when everything seemed to be going well and provided many different reasons for his decision, including not feeling romantically attracted to me, feeling overwhelmed with school, experiencing religious and identity issues, wanting to create a sense of chase, fearing commitment, and struggling with his mental health. Story 33. Everything was wrong. Most notably, he kept asking us to find a girlfriend. He constantly disrespected my boundaries, and he and his family frequently fought, often in front of me or while on the phone with me. Story 34. We were not supposed to be together romantically. We were not on the same wavelength. He is a good friend now, thankfully. It is easy to say this looking back, but it was hard to accept at the time. Story 35. When she went through menopause, she changed into a person I didn't know or love anymore. I have tremendous empathy for what a woman experiences during this time, but my ex used it against me and became extremely abusive, both mentally and physically. She refused to seek mental help, and I started to feel unhappy. She actually broke up with me over the phone, and I'm scared to retrieve my belongings from the condo. This was just over a year ago. I spent 11 years of my life with her and invested a significant amount of money in her. I'm glad we didn't have children. She was convinced that I was cheating on her during all that time and became extremely jealous and resentful. Story 36. I violated the boundary of only her initiating physical contact by touching her hand during dinner. She blocks me and does not give us a chance to talk. I send an email asking for closure and share a story that fits her narrative. It has been almost 4 weeks, and while the pain is not as bad, it still hurts a lot. I carry all the guilt and pain. Story 37. Not a breakup yet, but I am considering divorce due to my wife's poor communication. I can only repeat myself so much before I no longer see the point. Story 38. She became too clingy too quickly, saying, "I love you," within a week and discussing marriage just a few days later. Story 39. Recently, about 3 years ago, he claimed to have fallen out of love with me. Then he started being mean, hostile, and nasty for no reason. He told me he wanted to be friends, but gradually stopped talking to me over the course of 4 weeks. He took longer to reply, often ignored me, and then it simply stopped. I thought nothing of it until I discovered months later that he began befriending every single person he claimed to hate. I started rethinking our entire relationship from the beginning and recalled all the suspicious things that occurred. However, I was on a self-care journey, trying not to let anxiety make me overthink everything and assume something was wrong when it wasn't. I realized he manipulated that to get away with much more. There were numerous suspicious events. After we broke up, I did check his social media for a brief time, and 4 months later, he was posting about his new girlfriend. At that point, I suspected he had likely been cheating on me for months and lying to his friends about me to justify his actions. While I don't have any concrete proof, it's not hard to connect the dots. Befriending all the people he claimed to hate, having a girlfriend right after our breakup, the insults out of nowhere and the unfounded accusations against me, the fact that he spread lies and rumors about me to others. I truly believe he created falsehoods and rumors about me just to rationalize cheating. It doesn't matter anymore, though. I have someone now who has taught me a lot about myself. He loves me deeply, and that love hasn't faded. I cherish him, and he doesn't engage in the same behavior my ex did. My boyfriend also knew my ex and agrees there were many strange, suspicious behaviors about him. Story 40. She punched me in the head 5 times without me even touching her. She then said that I was the abuser in the relationship. The mental pain hurts more. I'm crying as I write this, and this happened a month ago. Story 41. She cheated after 12 years and tried to pass off a fake pregnancy as mine. After 2 years of being single, I am talking to a much nicer woman and we'll see what happens. Life is pretty good right now. Story 42. We both have our own healing to do. I didn't realize how much I still had to work on until they said they needed time to focus on themselves and heal. Childhood trauma is a burden, and wounds I thought were healed have been reopened. Story 43. She revealed to me that she was polyamorous and needed to date multiple people. I wished her the best of luck. Story 44. The woman was a poor mother. 2 out of 3 of her children ended up in prison multiple times. When one of the children got high on bath salts and threatened me, this woman decided I was overreacting and tried to make me look like the villain. Then, the second child, who was once a charming little girl, got her mother evicted from her apartment when her boyfriend turned out to be a drug dealer with warrants for his arrest after breaking the conditions of his parole. Now the child looks worn down after engaging in substance abuse. Story 45. For my last official breakup 3 years ago, my partner was, and still is, a very intense person with narcissistic personality disorder. I needed a longer period to return to myself, to my original state. Story 46. It was my first healthy and secure relationship, and I subconsciously sabotaged it with my fear of abandonment and my lack of self-awareness. I will regret it for the rest of my life. Story 47. I made the mistake of asking if he and his ex still had feelings for each other, as his ex kept showing up uninvited at his place to hang out, and he would forget he had plans with me. As a result of my inquiry, I was told I was jealous and possessive. I just wanted clarity, and I ended up being pushed away. Story 48. He assaulted me in my sleep, claiming it was an accident and that he thought I was awake. I stayed with him, believing his words that it was a mistake and he took responsibility, only for him to then demand I get over it after seeing the damage he inflicted on another person. All he wanted was the person he knew before he violated me. It's shocking considering I am still here, needing safety and peace to heal the layers I needed to become even more of the light he loved about me. Telling me to get over it was a significant sign of his lack of empathy towards me. That was him only looking out for himself and his own comfort, which is why communication wasn't going to improve. It required actually seeing me as a whole human being. Rebuilding trust takes consistency and time, not more untrustworthy behaviors. Communicating that didn't get through without his rage, which he took as an attack rather than a fact. He then started to verbally, emotionally, and physically abuse me, while also cheating on me emotionally and gaslighting me. He even claimed it was fun to gaslight me. I questioned whether he was sadistic after that. I believe he said whatever he needed to so the truth of what he was doing to me wouldn't get out to his friends and the new women he wanted to visualize having relationships with after assaulting me, treating me as an object rather than as a human being. He used denial, attack, and reverse victim and offender tactics on me frequently during our relationship. I was discarded, and he could no longer respect, love, or see me as human right after he committed the act of accidentally assaulting me. He didn't want to appear to be the bad guy for what he did, so he feigned ignorance regarding the source of his abuse, suggesting I must be the problem since he only acted this way with me. But his issues existed before me as well. He didn't want to hear my insights on how he could change his behaviors. Instead, he viewed it as silent treatment and perceived it as an attack. He took this approach to play the victim, using it as an excuse to keep hiding what he was hiding from me. I was seen as beneath him for correctly calling him out. During those attempts to communicate, he used those moments to pick fights with me so he could act without guilt by breaking up with me. He constantly threatened that and enjoyed watching me break down in confusion about it, finding amusement in what he thought he was getting away with hiding from me. His statements about working on things together and expressing love one day, then claiming nothing works and that he doesn't love me the next day, were part of the intermittent reinforcement he enjoyed using to keep me stressed and unable to fix or relax long enough for any meaningful improvement. Thus, he could point the finger and shout, "See, she is the problem, crazy, and the source of all the stress in our communication issues. Not me," allowing him to avoid accountability for what he did behind my back, knowing it was the real reason no improvements would occur between us. All of the promises he made to me he broke, failing to keep any of his word. Yet he demanded more trust from me. He didn't seem to recognize that my making those promises was my way of putting trust back in him. He wanted the new women to see him as a good person while wanting me to be perceived as the crazy girlfriend so that no one would believe me. He didn't have to tell anyone the truth. He could just lie and twist the narrative, avoiding accountability for his actions each time his cycle of abuse began. His distant, dishonest behavior, being caught in lies or gaslighting led to fights, followed by love bombing again, repeating the cycle. He still believes himself to be a good person because he treats others well and maintains healthy friendships. Thus, he concluded I must be his problem and cause of stress, prompting him to discard me without acknowledging how much he was responsible for both. He attempts to pretend he is scared of me because I spoke the truth and understood his cycle of screaming, physically abusing, or storming out intentionally to manipulate the situation to his advantage. He tries to portray my reactions to him, rather than his abuse, as the issue preventing us from communicating. This is due to his need to manipulate the narrative, portraying me as narcissistic and avoiding accountability while refusing to examine his own behavior. The reality is he is more the one with covert narcissistic tendencies, and perhaps I, having endured similar experiences with narcissistic individuals, am accurate in noticing his behaviors. He lied, hid behaviors that would make any partner anxious, gaslight, and physically abuse to conceal his addiction. The screen was more important to him than how he treated me, and he valued that intimate time more than he would respect or show basic human decency towards me. Only his preferences mattered. Mine were disregarded. He still fails to see that was the issue. I was devalued by him, and my ability to assert myself was taken away each time he tried to use my body while I slept for his own gratification, further objectifying me. He only wanted to engage with me when I was asleep or pick fights to return to his addiction, making me the perceived threat to his habits. I took on excessive self-blame for not being good enough or needing to communicate perfectly to try and prevent conflicts. I felt I had to remain silent so he could do as he pleased without fear of being caught, forcing him to lie about his actions. My declining health while with him was the clearest sign I wasn't the problem he gaslit me into believing. I lost 30 pounds in a month, and my eyesight worsened. I now have a cyst in my brain, a consequence of being with another narcissistic individual, constantly hoping I was mistaken about him. He persisted in behaviors that amplified the impact on another human being. I was not treated as his equal, and he refused to see me that way even now. He makes sure he can't be in the same room with me to maintain his facade for the new women who are unaware of the truth about him. A common tactic of narcissistic individuals when seeking new partners who don't appear damaged by previous abuse and do not recognize his manipulative games. Story 49. She had an emotional affair which I discovered. We agreed to seek marriage counseling and try to make it work. However, she left for good while I was at work, 2 months after my initial discovery, when I learned they had not actually stopped communicating. Story 50. I respected his wishes to keep things quiet because he was from a conservative culture that I did not know much about. He was cheating on me or on her with me. I am not sure which. Cheaters come from all cultures, so do not use my anecdote to be prejudiced. That being said, it hurt even more that he used my open-mindedness to his advantage. Story 51. I met someone else. We had only been dating a few weeks. To be completely honest, this all happened in 2011. The someone else is my wife, who I have been with for almost 14 years now. Story 52. I was excited about changing jobs and relocating 2 hours away, moving in together to truly start our lives. She was more anxious about having to move her belongings. That is the best analogy for our relationship. No reciprocity. Story 53. We just weren't compatible. We enjoyed different hobbies and weren't really fans of each other's interests. He's a great person, just not the right person for me. Story 54. I was an opiate addict, and she became pregnant by one of the men she was unfaithful with. It was mutual. Story 55. Distance and influence from family members can be significant. His father is very difficult to deal with, a typical overweight police officer who seems to dislike even the people he is meant to help. Initially, I wanted to support him, but then I realized I would not want that to be part of my family. Story 56. Not technically a breakup because we were not in an official relationship. However, he had a girlfriend while he pursued me, which made things complicated, and he said that we had to stop seeing each other because of that. Story 57. I don't know exactly why. When he explained the reasons, they were always changing. Today he explained A, and next month it could be B. Story 58. I was making poor choices and finally realized that I needed a break from dating and focus solely on friendships. After a year off, I recognized that I was the problem. My life needed more balance between home, work, friendships, family, hobbies, and health. I am still working on achieving balance, and I will be ready to try again soon. Story 59. Not trusted. I do not have the skills to help someone else address their insecurities. Story 60. My co-parent is going untreated for her borderline personality disorder, and it has put my children and me through a difficult time. We are currently dealing with challenging custodial litigation, which has been quite a nightmare. Story 61. When I asked my ex, the reasons were, I didn't want to go to a birthday party because his female best friend was there, which made me uncomfortable. I was too close to my best friend, my parents were too overprotective and didn't let me do much, and we were constantly arguing because of his female best friend. Story 62. She constantly accused me of things. She didn't like that the mother of my children and I were civil and helped each other with the kids. She also disapproved of my visits to my mother's house. If I was there for an hour, she would start texting and accusing me of various things. Eventually, I learned she was manipulative and discovered that she secretly had an account on a certain platform. Not only was she communicating with other people, but one of them was a close family member. Both of them are now out of my life, and I have chosen to stay single because my trust is completely gone. Story 63. She had rules and principles about how I should behave, but when it is her turn to honor her principles, suddenly the terms are different and somehow it is my fault. Any argument will be turned into a debate about the meanings of words or the terms of the argument rather than the topic itself. If she deflects, it is described as how humans argue, but if I change the subject, I am considered to be deflecting. I stuck around because I was afraid of being alone, trapped by the sunk cost fallacy, and naive in hoping that she would, for once, acknowledge her actions and words. Somehow, to her, anything that leaves her mouth is not her responsibility regarding how I react or how I am hurt. Story 64. Autistic burnout and immigrant anxiety on my part. Wanting to be a carefree 22-year-old guy living with his friends and having a fun girlfriend. There is nothing wrong with him. If anything, I'm jealous of his mentality. Story 65. We became orphans within 6 weeks of each other. We were together for 2 months when the first parent died. I still love that man dearly, but he couldn't handle our survival issues. Still hurts, but I do understand it. Story 66. During the height of COVID, we had to stop seeing each other in person because we worked at different medical providers with varied patient populations, which included many immunocompromised or vulnerable individuals. We had to be very cautious about cross-contaminating our workplaces. Eventually, we each burned out in different ways. We communicated less frequently and then eventually stopped altogether. Story 67. I catastrophized something I did. It didn't make any sense at all. You wouldn't say that to a coworker. Yeah, it's a flirty thing to say to someone I've been intimate with for the past year. But with people who have anxiety, it really doesn't matter what you do. They will interpret things in the most negative light. It literally doesn't matter. Story 68. I have just been admitted into a psychiatric program for delusions. She said I had to choose between her and the delusions. I don't think she understands the situation. Story 69. He was overly possessive. He would not tell me directly not to go out, but he would ruin every enjoyable moment I could have with my friends. He often accused me of cheating and would become angry and suspicious if I did not reply immediately, except when I was engaged in activities I had informed him about beforehand. I later learned that this behavior is referred to as reactive abuse. He would use my past experiences of being molested against me to teach me why I should not behave in certain ways. Once, he told me that if I got into a problematic situation, it would have been my fault. During the good times, he was the most caring, loving, and affectionate man. I loved him. To make matters worse, he was living with another woman. When I asked how this was possible since we sometimes talked on the phone at night, I discovered that she was deaf and would disconnect her implant when she went to sleep. 8 months of absolute turmoil. Story 70. He could not stop lying to me about significant issues, and when situations became challenging, he engaged in unhealthy, distancing behaviors and began to disappear. Then, he cheated on me after experiencing his friend's death, during a time when he was too cowardly to end our relationship or be honest. He started contacting someone new while I was taking care of his responsibilities during his mourning. I watched myself become an anxious mess in response to the discovery of repeated lies, and I adopted a perspective of not tolerating any more change. He chose actions that led me to leave. He has a new girlfriend now. I sit here feeling hurt. Story 71. Apparently, all men were supposed to want to have sex with her, and because I wanted to get to know her better first before crossing that line, I was labeled a creep and she didn't feel safe with me. It has been over 3 years since my last relationship, and after that entire experience, I am not sure if relationships are for me. They seem too complicated and filled with nonsense. Story 72. I think he was feeling guilty for always turning down my offers for plans because he was so busy with university. It was the day after he declined my invitation again, and he mentioned that he wasn't in the right frame of mind for a relationship. Story 73. I just didn't love her back the way she loved me, but I wanted to. On paper, she is the best woman I have ever been with. I don't know why, but I just couldn't fall in love with her. She got married about 2 years later, and I am truly happy for her. I knew it would be quick because she is too good of a woman for someone else not to see it. Story 74. He was abusive, and I was suffering from emotional domestic violence, which included some minor physical abuse at times. We have a child, and he left me to endure everything on my own. At least my mind is at peace now, but I fear I can never love anyone again due to my current lifestyle. Story 75. I felt she didn't trust me. Though I know it's something she can work on, it had been 2 years, and I had never done anything to betray her. She knew that, but in the end, the trust one sought and thought I had was not there. I want her to be happy, and I hope she finds someone she can truly trust. Story 76. She claimed she prayed about our relationship and God told her that he didn't want us together and wanted her to be single for the foreseeable future. I guess the foreseeable future was about 2 months because that's how long it took her to start dating another guy we knew from church. Now they're married. This is also why I stopped being religious. Story 77. I just wasn't good enough. I am not abusive, I have a good job, and I rent a house, but I didn't want to go out for activities every month as if it were an ultimatum, especially since I would always have to pay. I wasn't present enough. She is very sensitive and wanted to make me more sensitive. Story 78. Too much damage occurred. We were long distance at first, but as soon as we closed the distance, it became problematic. By the end, we were constantly on each other's nerves with very little trust and a lot of bad history. It had to end. Otherwise, I was genuinely afraid something terrible and unforgivable might have happened. Story 79. I walked in the door from a weekend out of town, and the first sentence I heard was, "I don't think I want to be married anymore." She would not provide any explanation beyond that. For the record, my second marriage just reached our 30th anniversary. Story 80. She was frequently communicating with an online friend, and I began to ask questions. Their texting was excessive, yet she didn't want to put her phone away often, nor did she want to discuss our relationship. Eventually, it became overwhelming for me, and I wanted to resolve the issue by talking about it for several days. She told me I was jealous, insecure, and controlling, and then she broke up with me. A few days later, she went to him. Story 81. It might sound crazy, but it was due to crudeness. She was a beautiful woman, but she would fart all the time. At restaurants, shops, churches, and then die laughing, drawing attention to her creation. Even the first time we slept together, I remember leaving the bedroom to go to the bathroom when she called my name and said, "Check it out." Literally grabbed her buttocks and spread them, farting in my direction. I actually saw inside her anus. After a few months of this, I sat her down and explained that I wasn't a kid and didn't find it funny, but really disgusting. I understand people need to fart, but not intentionally, and making jokes like a child. She looked at me as if I had two heads. The final straw was when I took her out to a nice restaurant, a €300 meal for which we had to wait 3 or 4 months for a reservation. While sitting at our table all dressed up, I got a foul smell of feces. So strong I swear I could taste it. I leaned across to ask her if she smelled it, and she died laughing, saying she needed to use the toilet. It wasn't just that she acted like a man on a construction site. The fact that she knew it bothered me but insisted on the toilet humor completely turned me off her. Story 82. Multiple reasons include physical attraction, stronger romantic feelings, and a lack of family acceptance. Story 83. She cheated and left to be in a polyamorous relationship, which then fell apart in less than a year. Now she is engaged to the man from that relationship because the other person got divorced. Shocking, I know. Story 84. We just stopped messaging each other one day. Nothing happened between us. We just didn't pick up the phone ever again. It's been 7 years. Story 85. We became long distance and he practically ghosted me. It turns out he was emotionally cheating on me with another girl. When I finally ended things, he posted about her not even a week later. Story 86. He didn't make me feel safe. I told him the things that needed to change over time to make me feel more comfortable and safe with him. That was asking too much. Story 87. Not COVID, funny enough, but right before it began spreading. The guy wasn't actually interested in me. He was another narcissistic, sex-crazed person. I didn't engage in intimacy within the few months we had been dating, so he ended the relationship when COVID had spread and started to get serious. It took me a year or two after that to figure him out. Hindsight is clear and my instincts are flawed. Story 88. He saw a spider in the bathroom, shrieked, and called his mom out of bed to take care of it. Story 89. My partner fell into a deep depression and pushed me and their family away. It breaks my heart, but I have faith that they will receive the help they need. Story 90. There was a brief talking phase of 2 weeks, but he was highly disorganized, blamed others for his problems, and did not respect my physical boundaries. He consistently made fun of me for having boundaries. Story 91. We returned home after a lovely day at his sister's for a barbecue. He was intoxicated and decided I was no longer good enough for him, so he destroyed the apartment and threatened me with a bat. Fortunately, I was strong enough to defuse the situation, but it could have turned out differently for someone else in my position. I was lucky. I have never witnessed someone shift from love to blind hatred so quickly, especially while we were building a life together. I haven't dated since. That was 5 years ago. Story 92. We used to go out and binge drink 3 to 4 times a week, which compromised my finances, health, and employment. All that whiskey consumption was damaging my dreams. Story 93. My ex-girlfriend and I had issues communicating and staying in touch since it was a long-distance relationship. We often met in a particular city, which became boring as we realized there wasn't much to do except go to shops or cafes. I didn't offer to have her over to my place, which I admit wasn't great of me. I live in the countryside, where there is literally nothing to do, but I always offered to go to her town and spend time with her there. She always said no, and I accepted it until she invited a friend who lived near me to hang out with her in her town. This led to an argument because she never let me hang out with her. During the argument, she revealed that it was because she didn't want people to see us together. She has always been incredibly shy and would blush when we held hands in public. However, I felt this was too much to dismiss as shyness anymore. One night, I was at a friend's house for drinks, got very drunk, and began crying about my worries regarding the relationship. A very close friend of mine, who was also incredibly drunk, lunged at me, kissed me, and told me that my girlfriend didn't deserve me. I kissed back, and we ended up making out on the floor until I realized what was happening. I pulled away, sat on the sofa, and she followed me. I spent the rest of the night pushing her away and telling her to get away from me, but she didn't listen. I ended up with a hickey from her. The next morning, after sobering up, I realized what had happened and cried for about an hour before messaging my girlfriend to break up with her. I didn't tell her about the cheating, and I felt terrible about it. I continued to cry all night. I genuinely loved her, and this situation destroyed me. I couldn't stop thinking about how I had betrayed her and how she didn't deserve to be with someone like me. I am much better now, but it was a difficult couple of months afterward during which I made some poor decisions and had to seek help. Story 94. We were together for 2.5 years. She was gone for months at a time traveling solo. I felt like she'd rather be by herself far away than with me, and my needs weren't being met. Over time, it got to me. I asked a close friend in confidence, through a voice memo, if he ever thought about cheating on his partner and how he handled those thoughts. She eventually found this message weeks later after looking through my smartwatch. Understandably, she could not get over this betrayal. I felt really ashamed, but I also don't regret asking the question to a friend, again in confidence. The morning before Thanksgiving, We were at her mother's place a couple of hours from the city we were living in. We woke up, and not long after, with a blank expression on her face, she told me she was moving to Colorado. I don't remember exactly what I said, but it amounted to, "All right, we're pretty much done then." Within 5 minutes of waking up, I was on the road home, and the relationship was over. Overall, it was a pretty clean break. Story 95, he is a heavy drinker. His days off consist of drinking from 9 a.m. until bedtime, and his workdays from arriving home until bedtime. The way he spoke to me when he was drinking was unacceptable. Therefore, I chose to prioritize myself. Story 96. It was a gradual erosion of trust on both sides over several years that ultimately led to an inability to work as a team and a lingering resentment. We remain friends, and I am still involved in her daughter's life. We are much better apart than together. Story 97. They became addicted to reading fantasy books about fairies and vampires. Then, they became increasingly unfriendly and hostile whenever I tried to engage them in conversation. Story 98. My ex was toxic, manipulative, and psychopathic. I had too good a heart to let go that quickly, but once he hacked my Snapchat account to text my best friend and call her and my mom derogatory names while saying that women shouldn't have any rights at all, that was when I actually lost it. Story 99. Our goals did not align, and there were certain things we were both set on that were non-negotiable. It was amicable, mature, and respectful. There are no ill feelings, and I wish him all the best. Story 100. I never liked him and felt pressured to say yes when he asked. It lasted about 2 months. He was also not likable and had no idea how to engage in a conversation. Story 101. We wanted different things out of life. He was more grateful for what he had, while I was just hungry for more. I felt like he would make my life smaller, and he felt like I would make his life bigger. Story 102. They realized they were a lesbian. It's hard to fault them there. We're still really close friends, actually. But in the decades since then, I have yet to succeed in getting another girlfriend. I'm pretty popular with guys, though that doesn't help me much, considering I'm straight. So it goes, I guess. Story 103. Honestly, I think she was more into her other partner than into me. She has never had a healthy relationship, and I realized that once she didn't have to chase me anymore, I suddenly became uninteresting. She loves control and the push and pull dynamic, which she definitely has with her other partner. She ended things with me. I'm still recovering, months later, and I feel very sad. But I deserve better. Story 104. She wanted children as soon as possible. I didn't because we had only been dating for under 3 weeks. Her ex came back into the picture and decided that he wanted children with her, so I wasn't really needed anymore. It was disappointing at the time, but she turned out to be very conservative and became involved in multi-level marketing, so I guess I dodged a bullet. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.